Hi, welcome to Minutes with Mickey, a time for us to wonder about the story that we're calling the Thistle and the Cedar. We find this narrative in 2nd Chronicles chapter 25 and in 2nd Kings chapter 14 verses 1 through 22. Let's start by thinking through our geography and our history. Right away, you need to remember that we're now talking about the southern kingdom of Judah. This is the story that is centering on the southern kingdom. Israel is the northern kingdom. Amaziah has become king of Judah. Jehoash is still the king of Israel. Why is it that in this story, God would not want Amaziah to partner with some of the soldiers from Israel for this particular battle? I wondered about that. Is it because God continues to say you are two separate kingdoms? I am doing things for you and with you and judging you on two different places, and I don't want to mingle these two? Is that possible? Or is it because Judah at this point is the weaker of the two, and he wants to show Amaziah and the Jewish people of Judah that God is in charge and that God will give them victory and that they don't need extra support? That's a possibility. Certainly, it is clear that the prophet says, if you bring these Israelite army with you, God will not give you victory. You will be defeated. Now, the question becomes then, why is it that as long as the Israelite army that was hired gets their silver, why would they be so upset? Is it because perhaps, and I know that John mentioned this about the fact that that's what they were made for. They love the war, they love fighting, and this is what their job, and to be able to not do it was frustrating for them. Or is there perhaps another reason? And that might have to do with where Edom is. So get out your map and take a look at where the nation of Judah is and where Israel is and then where Edom is and then what is Edom in relationship to Moab and how that feeds into the security of the nation of Israel as well as the nation of Judah. Because I think there may be something there that Israel would want to participate in the victory so that they could lord it over Moab. Anyway, it's just a thought that I have. And then why is it that God continues to not have this alliance happening? So Judah defeats Edom. They are successful. God gives them the victory. And yet Amaziah, who had been following the Lord, brings back idols and begins to worship those idols. The prophet comes to Amaziah and says, you shouldn't be doing this. God should be getting the glory. Don't worship these idols. And Amaziah is so full of his own pride and his own self-direction that he threatens the prophet. What happens to the prophet? Where does the prophet go? Which prophet is this? I'm wondering, is it the same one who said don't use the Israelites? Is it a different prophet? Was there a school of prophets? Because this point in time, Amaziah says, who hired you to be a prophet? So do we not know who this prophet is? I think it's interesting that this particular prophet is not named. The prophet says, because you did not listen to God's message, you are going to be destroyed. The God will not let you. And he's going to put it in your mind to go up against Israel. So Amaziah decides that he's now going to go up against Israel, and we have Israel, Jehoash's reply or response to this threat with this very short little parable. The parable to me seems rather odd. How do you have a thistle and a cedar talking about marriage of a daughter and a son? It's almost as if to me the parable goes beyond its own little boundaries of what a parable is. It seems to demonstrate that the thistle is the smaller and the weaker of the two elements. And so Judah is considered the smaller and the weaker. Israel is considered the stronger. And yet, by surprise, the thistle will be squashed. And Jehoash says, it is your pride that has gotten you in this trouble. Just enjoy your victory and leave us alone. But then the question becomes to me, because once Amaziah decides to go ahead and go against Israel and is defeated in that process, why is it that Jehoash doesn't take over Judah? Why do they just plunder Judah and go back home and leave Amaziah where he is and not all of a sudden unify these two nations again? They leave them separate. Something about God's design of having them stay separate, is that why? And how is it that Jehoash and his army could plunder the temple? Because the temple is where God's presence was supposed to be. And you would think that if God's presence was there, they would not be able to defy that area, and yet they did. And is that because God's presence had already left the temple? God's presence was not there because of the disobedience of Amaziah. Something I wondered about. And then take a look at 2 Chronicles 25:25 and 2 Kings 14, verse 15, and you'll see that Jehoash, the king of Israel, dies, and Amaziah stays as king of Judah for another 15 years. So apparently they never did sort of get together. And so during that time that Jehoash was living, was Amaziah still running things in Judah? Were they two separate kingdoms? Where does this fit? Those are just a couple of the questions that I have. But most importantly, I think the bigger question to ask is, how often do we run ahead of God? How many times do we go ahead and worship that which is not valid? How many times have we heard God's voice and done it our own way, and then have allowed pride to get in the way so that we don't even hear what we're supposed to be doing? Most importantly, as you read this story, as you think about it, reflect on it, what's God saying to you? Have a great week.